FedEx Cup, there is a really huge, I think it's being underplayed, to be honest, or people aren't realize the significance of it. In fairness, that the FedEx Cup, I'm talking about keeping your card now, is going from the top 100 to the, or from top 125, sorry, to top 100. Think about how huge a reduction that is. The tour hasn't seen a reduction of that scale in over 40 years since they started the all-exempt tour in 1983. So what you're looking at now is players, and it's not, this is kind of grabbing big names, right? You're looking at players that previously, up to Max Home at 122 in this particular list, you're looking at players that previously would have been fully exempt. You're okay, don't worry about a thing. But now you look at it and you go, wow, there's some guys. Now, you look at like Austin Eckroat, he's 100, but he's still exempt, so he's okay. But you're looking at some pretty big name players that you're talking about them losing their fully exempt status. This is huge. This is 25 guys, again, with notwithstanding special status that they've earned, that would be losing their jobs. That would be losing their fully exempt card. Now, the way that it would work is they, in the future, those that finished in that category, say up to 125, they would be in an exempt category, just not fully exempt. They would fall in behind the Korn Ferry Tour winners, as an example, moving forward. So I just think that this is absolutely huge, and it speaks to changes coming to the PGA Tour. So what the PGA Tour is attempting to do is they're looking at it and saying, okay, well, we started these signature events, and the signature events, if you're looking at it from the perspective of let's say, a dissenting perspective, if you please, you would say, okay, well, it's a rich get richer because the signature events have a much bigger purse. The signature events, that if you're in a signature event, it's much easier to stay in the signature event because it's based on points, and all those points are bigger from the signature events, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. What it really comes down to is that the PGA Tour made a decision to say, the thing that moves the needle for us are our stars. So we need to put together a tour that there were 8 signature events this year, plus you have the FedEx Cup playoffs, plus you have the majors, et cetera. So you can start to do the math in terms of how it stacks up. We need to put together a tour where the people see the best of the best, while less, but still a decent amount of times, and then you add into it the other big events. Yeah, like I said, players, majors, FedEx Cup playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the, you can tell I'm in a city, and you can tell I'm right outside of New York City, because you can hear the fire trucks and the police cars going by. That's the symphony of sound that exists in these big cities, and they are vibrant and they are exciting. I hope wherever that's going, everybody's okay. It's passing directly under us right now. So what the PGA Tour was attempting to do is to say, okay, we're going to put together a tour within a tour. They haven't used this terminology, this is me talking. We're going to put together a tour within a tour where we have these signature events, and the signature events are roughly 80 players, and you've got players who were exempt for the signature events based upon their performance in the prior year. That's up into the BMW Championship. That's the top 50. Then you have the Aon Next 5. Then you have the Aon Swing 10. And that's based upon players who are playing well at the full field events in between the signature events, and they can earn their pathway in. I'll give you an example of what that means. Maverick McNeely, we've been talking about today. JJ Spawn is another good example of players that have worked their way into these elite fields. So it can be done. It is possible to do. And then you have the full field events, which is basically for the rest. That doesn't mean that signature players in signature events, like this past weekend at the Rocket Classic, which Aldrich Potgieter won, like Colin Morikawa was playing in that event. And players are looking to make, because they have these critical numbers, get inside the top 50 so that you're inside the signature events for 2026. Get inside the top 70 so that you're in the FedEx Cup playoffs. Get inside the top 100 so you're fully exempt and you keep your card for 2026. So these are the things that are changing. The PGA Tour is looking at it and going, okay, we need to create events that have a stronger field so that there's more interest from, well, all of you guys. That was the mentality behind it. That was what they were trying to do. That is what they accomplished if you judge it from the standpoint of where the ratings are on television. And across the board, you'll see that the ratings are up. And obviously, also the majors have a lot to do with it because they were awesome too. They've contributed. We still have one more of those to go. We still have those FedEx Cup playoffs that I mentioned to go. We still have the Ryder Cup to go. So we've got some really cool things that lie in the horizon. So from the standpoint of what the PGA Tour is trying to do, and was this a reaction to what Liv was doing? 100%. Full on credit where credit is due, because I asked a member of the board, Peter Malnati, one time, I said, did you benefit from Liv? He said, absolutely. So, I mean, it is what it is. But again, I'm not criticizing anybody from that one way or the other, because if you notice what your competition is doing and your competition is doing something better than you and you don't react to that, then shame on you. So they put all this together. They put the structure together, and it's working. For me personally, I still would like to see the signature events have a larger field, because I think when you have the stars, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say to your network media partners, no, don't worry about it. You're going to have the stars. When it comes to the weekends, you're going to see the big names. You're going to the sponsors and going, look, we know this costs a lot of money to do what you're doing, and you're going to have the stars. They're going to be there. It's all good, right? So that's working. But my feeling is that I don't think you need to limit the field as much as they have. For example, if it were me, I would go from 80 to 120 like they used to have for all of the invitationals, and I would still have a cut. Cut's obviously going to be smaller, but my conviction is that the bigger name players will always, the cream's going to rise to the top, will always get to the top of the leaderboard. And if they don't, that means one of those guys who you've rarely heard from or are just trying to get to know, or maybe it's a young guy like Aldrich that emerged at the top. I don't know. I love seeing that. But you're given limited opportunities for that to take place so that you're staying true to this formula that they've created that is working in terms of what it's getting back from the marketplace and the success that they're having in the marketplace. So all of these numbers are really important. And we're at a time of year, again, as Don was talking about, roughly 5 events left. I always get a little bit of a smirk whenever the discussion comes up about whether Keegan should pick himself for the team, and then you have the people say, oh, no, there's a lot of time. There's still a lot of time. There's not a lot of time. There's absolutely not a lot of time. Keegan said this past week at the Rocket Classic that he's concentrating on being the captain, and it sounded to me like very much like the whole team kind of huddled together. They all talk all the time. They're like, we need to quell this. We need to quiet this discussion down because it's going to be too much of a distraction on the captain. For right now, you're just the captain. Okay, cool. We don't have to worry about anything else until the day that you actually pick. So for right now, you're just a captain. The thing that could really throw off that scenario for Keegan, what happens if he wins again? What happens if he plays really well in a couple events? What happens if he plays really well at the Open? What happens if he wins the Open? And it's like automatic. You can't even deny it anymore, right? You're winning one of those positions. It's done. So it's really curious, and there's some big changes coming to the PGA Tour, and that's why it is so fascinating, because these changes that I'm talking about are not theory. They're happening and they're taking place this year. Even the Tour Championship scrapped the idea that they've used the last few years of having players coming in, the first player in line starts the week 10 under par, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff was bizarre, and it didn't make sense to the viewers. And ultimately, the people that you have to serve, the people that you have to make sure are happy are the players. Nowadays, more so than it's been in decades on the PGA Tour. The players have got themselves in a position where their voice really matters. Your media partners, it really matters. Because if the media partners can't make the commercial revenue that they need from the broadcast of your event, it's going to impact the value of your rights package. Your sponsors really matters. The sponsors are doing it for a reason. Yes, you need to get to know what the individual reasons are of all of these respective sponsors, but for many of them, they need to bring in their biggest clients. They need to make sure that they're wowed. They need to make sure that they're seeing big names there. So for all those reasons, all of that is working, but there are big changes coming. I mean, we have a new CEO on the PGA Tour, Brian Rolab, who came over from the NFL, and amongst other things, he was one of the reasons that the NFL network has been so successful. What does that mean for the PGA Tour? This kind of focus on the rights, etc. Brian's got to deal with a membership constituency where you're going to have people that are not happy about all the things that I just discussed, about what they call limiting playing opportunities. That's the terminology that they'll use, whereas the PGA Tour is kind of looking at it from a sober position, going, it's not about the equity of playing opportunities. It's about surviving in today's complex sports marketplace, and that's also a sports media marketplace, and Brian is an expert in that area vis-a-vis the NFL. He was there for 22 years, and you'll see he was most recently the NFL's chief media and business officer. He oversaw long-term agreements with Amazon, CBS, ESPN, ABC, Fox, NBC for the distribution of NFL games over television and digital platforms. Prior to joining the NFL, you got to go all the way back to 2003. He served as director of business development for NBC Universal in New York. So he's got that experience. He's been on both sides of the table. It's absolutely fascinating, but he is going to have to deal with the politics of a membership, and make sure you deal with that, because the PGA Tour is going to do and say all the right things about what Jay Monahan has had to deal with and what Jay Monahan has done. And whether you like Jay or you don't like Jay, Jay still got them to where they are today, where they've got this new CEO coming in. But he's got a lot of stuff that he's going to have to tackle, and it's going to be a complicated job for Brian Rolab, and not the least of which is to start right where I just mentioned, with the media. And I'm not talking about guys with, pen and paper and microphones in hand and what their reaction or opinion is. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the opinion of the players, the opinion of the sponsors, the opinion of your media partners, because the media partners are putting so much money into the PGA Tour and those rights, and you've got to protect the value of your rights. That is the underpinning of any league. So it's all fascinating, but it brings us back to those numbers that I was talking about. There's change. The winds of change are blowing. Top 50 is critically important for those signature events, because it is a rich get richer, whether you like it or not. That's the reality of where you stand right now. You need to get inside of that top 70, or you're not going to have the best chance for your run through the FedEx Cup and the FedEx Cup playoffs accordingly. Critically important for all of the status that players need moving forward. And then ultimately, where are you relative to the top 100? Because if you're not inside that number, you are losing your job. Maybe there are players that are exempt for other reasons, like the wins over the last couple of years, and so they can ride that out for a little bit more. But if you don't have that status, you're losing your full-time job. You're losing the ability to say, I'm going to play where I want, when I want, any place on the PGA Tour, and you've got to roll the dice, the luck of the draw, to make sure that you get in based upon your status. And you're still going to have an elevated status, but you're not going to be fully exempt. And that's just the top 125. Outside of that, and you're really not talking about players that are that far off the mark, they're going to have to try to figure out what they're going to do through the Corn Ferry Tour. Absolutely fascinating.